Ce que je vais maintenant vous révéler est classé top secret par l'Agence nationale de sécurité. Le CAA a intercepté dans l'espace un message radio provenant d'un corps en orbite autour de Neptune. La fréquence d'émission du message s'est révélée être celle de l'Event Horizon.
Il a disparu pendant 7 ans. Où était-il?
Nous sommes là pour le découvrir.
What can fans expect from this 4K edition of Event Horizon?
I'm really happy that, there is a 4K edition. Event Horizon I made as a theatrical experience. But as a movie, it's kind of grown, it's gathered a cult following in all the ancillary markets. To start with, that was like VHS tapes. And, seeing what Event Horizon looked like on VHS was like, oh God, just wasn't what it was in a movie theater, right? And it didn't sound how it sounded in a movie theater. And then, Laserdisc was slightly better. DVD was, again, incrementally better. And now, 4K with the new sound, I think you can kind of have as close as possible to a theatrical experience while watching the movie at home. And it's obviously, visually, it's a movie I put a lot of effort into giving it a very specific look. And I'm glad that that's now kind of reflected in the quality of the movie that people can take home.
Action! The Exorcist set on a spaceship. That's basically the concept, is to make a movie like The Shining or The Exorcist or Poltergeist, but set on a spaceship.
Can you tell me about the genesis of Event Horizon? What brought you to direct this movie?
It was a really striking screenplay by Philip Eisner. For me, it was a wonderful combination because, I'd just done a kind of PG-13 movie with Mortal Kombat, which wasn't a comic book movie, but it was based on a video game, but it had a very kind of comic book vibe.
La terre va dépendre de vous. Pardon.
So I didn't want to do another movie like that because that was only my second movie. So I wanted to kind of like spread my wings and do something different. So, and Philip's screenplay was dark and it was scary, and it combined two things that I loved: outer space and a haunted house movie. So I was getting to make two movies at once in my mind. So that was really the big attraction for me.
And I heard that at that time you turned down an offer to direct the first X-Men movie.
Yes, yeah, because I felt that X-Men was, it was that same PG-13 comic book vibe that I'd already done, and I wanted to do something dramatically different.
But don't you regret it now?
Nah, listen, I saw those X-Men movies and I liked them, and somebody else made them, and that's okay. I got to make Event Horizon.
Did you take inspiration from Clive Barker's work to create the atmosphere of Event Horizon?
Definitely, I was thinking about Clive, and the other dimension with the Cenobites and everything. But I think, and there's definitely the influence of his work there. But for me, the biggest influence was really, it was a series of painters. It was more, we were leaning on the work of Hieronymus Bosch and Bruegel, a bit of Salvador Dali, and also the photographic work of Joel Peter Wittgen. Those and more than anything, really, Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. That was the big inspiration for Event Horizon in terms of the look, because when we were prepping to make the movie, we screened a whole bunch of great movies that I thought should be inspirations. So we screened Robert Wise's The Haunting. We watched, because it's a great haunted house movie, and we watched 2001, and we watched Alien. And what struck me was, both 2001 and Alien had such amazing looks. And it's because they had such strong inception points for their look. 2001 had all of the research that was done with NASA as to what it would really be. And that kind of gives it a very unified, very cool look. And of course, in Alien, Ridley Scott had Giger. He had one man's life's work that was, this whole biomechanical idea that Giger had developed in his artwork. that was really distilled down into the look of that movie. So I'm sitting there going, well, what do I have? Because I can't just sit there with a production designer and try and come up with a cool look. I've got to have, like, those movies had strong driving inception points. You know, what is my inception? And I was actually in Paris at the time, and I was walking around Notre Dame Cathedral. And of course, Notre Dame it's inspiring, but it's also scary. You know, it's it overwhelms you, as it was intended to, you know, with the majesty of God, right? It's supposed to make you feel small, and I thought, well, how great if you walk into the Event Horizon, it has that same kind of effect on you. So I came back. When I came back to LA, I said, look, we have to build the whole spaceship, the Event Horizon, out of Notre Dame, and that's what we did. So we scanned the cathedral into a computer, and then we broke apart the constituent elements of Notre Dame, and we built the Event Horizon out of it. So the towers of Notre Dame became the thruster pods, the engines of the Event Horizon. All of the ironwork is based upon the stained glass windows of Notre Dame. The antenna arrays are like kind of gargoyles. The very kind of floor plan of the cathedral is in a cruciform shape, obviously, which is the cruciform shape of the Event Horizon. And then when you go inside, the production design is all Gothic architecture. It's like flared pillars. So it was it was a long process, but that's how we built the interior, was out of Gothic architecture.
I had no idea Notre Dame was an inspiration for the ship, but that's cool. And can you tell me a little bit about the troubled production of Event Horizon, how some material got cut and stuff?
What happened was we had a very compacted post-production because Paramount was making Titanic with James Cameron. And Cameron told them fairly late in the game that they weren't going to get the movie for summer. It wouldn't be ready until the winter. So Paramount now had this big slot open in the summer, and they said, "You're it. You're gonna release Event Horizon in the summer." And I think, you know, I was kind of a young, inexperienced filmmaker. I think if I'd known what I know now, I would have pushed back against the studio, because Event Horizon not really a summer movie. It's not a fun popcorn movie. No. You know, we were released. There was like a Harrison Ford movie that was being released at the same time, Air Force One. You know, it was like these big summer movies, and there was us. And we didn't really belong there, but, you know, the studio wanted it, so I went for it. And normally as a director, you would have 14 weeks to cut a movie like this before you show it to an audience. I had 4 weeks because we had to get it ready for this release. So as a result, the cut that we showed was unpolished. You know, it was too long. And also then the studio was horrified by all the visions of hell, which I think they'd never seen, because I think they were too busy kind of dealing with Titanic. I don't think they were watching the dailies on my movie. So I think the test screening was the first time they saw all these impalings and all the blood and people tied up in barbed wire, and they were frankly horrified by it. You know, one studio executive said to me, "But we're the studio that makes Star Trek," as though somehow I was kind of bringing Star Trek into question. You know, I was like defiling Star Trek. So the studio were you know, they were a bit freaked out by it, and so they encouraged me to cut the movie down, which I would have done anyway, you know, given longer post-production process, but I probably wouldn't have cut it as much as I did for the finished movie. But I have to say, I'm not disappointed at all with the final cut, because I think, you know, they definitely forced me to reduce the visions of hell, but I think by making these visions like very intense bursts, I think it improves it made them more powerful. You know, the whole, you know, less is more. And I think I can't tell you how many people have come up to me and said, "Oh, your movie, that image in your film," and they describe something that I never shot, but they've imagined that they've seen. And I think that's the power of kind of these fast subliminal cuts, is you allow the audience's imagination to work. And of course, you know, nothing scares people more than their own imagination.
But how did those extra scenes got lost? Is there really no way to find them someday?
Well, there are some of these scenes exist on kind of VHS on earlier cuts of the movie. But you have to remember, Event Horizon was right before DVD, and DVD, the DVD revolution kind of created, the need for additional content, different cuts, deleted scenes. We were right before that, so we were still releasing on VHS tape where there was no, or Laserdisc. Where you were lucky to even cram the movie onto the Laserdisc, because you'd have to. I remember having like a 6-disc version of Apocalypse Now, where you had to kind of keep changing the sides, and so there just wasn't any call for all that additional material. And then by the time DVD came along and the movie started building a big audience and started selling a lot of copies, and the studio then wanted that stuff, it was too late. They hadn't archived it.
So those lost sequences, it was all about hell visions and stuff?
Mainly, yes. Yeah. That was the main, that's how I took time out of the movie. And there was also more exploring the Event Horizon, but it was more time spent in the sets that you already see in the movie. It wasn't like there was a part of the Event Horizon that I took out completely, or a part of the story that I took out completely. It was just internal tightenings within the existing scenes.
At some point, did you think about making a sequel to Event Horizon?
I've thought about it, and I've definitely been asked about it a lot. I kind of worry about, going back and revisiting it, because people seem to like it so much. And I think, one of the things that has propelled the movie after its release is the ambiguity of the film. The fact that we don't tie everything up really neatly. And, I don't know if doing a sequel where you explain everything, what really happened at the end of the movie, was Jolie Richardson insane? Had they escaped hell or not? Is Sam Neill really there? It's kind of like, did the ship really eat them? It's kind of, I like the fact that that's all left open. And also, so, I mean, I think to make a sequel and kind of explain things, I might just reduce the power of the original movie.
Are you interested in making pure terrifying gore horror movies again sometime?
You know what? I'm actually working on a movie right now, which is more of a straight psychological horror movie, which I'm very excited about. Because since Event Horizon, I've obviously made movies that have horror elements, but they've been more kind of action horror. And I've been looking for the right kind of project to go back to just doing a psychological, scary movie. And I think that'll probably be, if not the next movie I make, maybe the one after.
And do you have any news from the Event Horizon TV series that was announced at some point?
I know nothing about it. I'm not involved in it. Again, it's like the world of Event Horizon. I don't, I'm very, very proud of the original movie, and I don't know if you really need to expand upon it. So that's not something that I'm involved in.
Last question. Why do you think Event Horizon became such a cult movie for horror fans over the years?
Well, I think partly, it's, as I said, it's the ambiguity of the movie. It gives people things to talk about. So I think there's a lot of debate about the film, about what the kind of hell dimension really is, about what really happens at the ending. So I think it's a movie that's open to interpretation, which I think is always good for kind of longevity, because you can watch it again, you can discuss it. And then also, I think our approach to shooting the movie, doing everything practical where we could, means that the movie still looks great. I have my visual effects supervisor, Richard Urasich, to thank for that. When there was a choice between putting Lawrence Fishburne in front of a blue screen or building an upside down set that moved, hanging Fishburne upside down on a wire, rotating him and spinning the camera around at the same time, Richard would always be, do that. And then all we have to do in the visual effects department is a wire removal, and everything will look amazing. Now that was a harder way to shoot. It was more expensive, it was more difficult, but ultimately it meant that the movie still looks great, because everything you're looking at the movie is real. We didn't have an over-reliance on CG. And so I think that, and we could have gone the CG route, because it was after Jurassic Park, CG was available. And there was a discussion, do you want to do the spaceship CG or big models? And I'm like, I want to do big models. And I'm glad I did, because they still look great, in my opinion. Whereas imagine if I built them in 1997 CG, the movie it certainly wouldn't look the way it looks now. So, and I don't think it would have had the kind of longevity that it has now.
Après 7 ans passés aux confins de l'espace,
18 personnes étaient à bord et ont disparu. Je veux comprendre pourquoi.
Ouverture porte extérieure.
il est revenu inhabité.
Et l'équipage?
Aucune trace. J'ai l'impression d'être dans une tombe.
Mais il n'est pas revenu seul.